All right, welcome everyone to CDI's webinar titled Zombie Apocalypse Scenarios, How to Avoid Them with Laserfiche. A little spooktacular demonstration of some features in Laserfiche that can make your life easier. During our webinar, we'll be able to answer any questions you have in the questions box. Go ahead and post those there. I'll pay attention to that and answer your questions as we go along, since you're in listen-only mode. If you need help, go ahead and raise your hand. I've got Julio watching this as well to help assist you with any questions as well. And just take notes or screenshots if you like as we go through. Go ahead and ask questions, as I mentioned before. And at the end, there will be a survey. We do appreciate your feedback on our webinars. This webinar will be recorded, and that will be available on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and feel free to find all of our videos there on the YouTube channel, not only this video, but any from the past. We certainly encourage you to learn as much as you can about Laserfiche. During our session here today, we're going to take a look at a few topics. First topic is looking for runaway workflows. Let's say you've got a zombie document out there that just is causing workflows to do all kinds of crazy things. We can go ahead and use some tools here to troubleshoot and find and fix the situation. Now, thankfully, in Laserfiche Cloud, the workflow automation has some built-in settings that will prevent zombie workflows. But if you have an on-premise system with workflows that are doing things that you don't expect, you can troubleshoot and stop them in their tracks. And we'll talk about how we can do that using the workflow designer and some Laserfiche services. In some cases, if you're doing volume imports, or repository migrations, you may end up with orphaned documents. And this is something you find only in on-premise situations. Laserfiche Cloud, there are no multiple volume imports. So typically that's not going to be found there. So typically on a on-premise system, you might find that. And we'll talk about how we can locate our orphaned documents. In the system, there might be deactivated or expired users, and there are several different ways to find them. If you're using Laserfiche Cloud, we can sort our users and find them by status. In Laserfiche Directory Server, if you have an on-premise system, you might find them there, and we'll show you how to sort and filter. And then on the repository administration console for any repository, we can find users that are deactivated as well. So we'll talk about different methods there. And finally, to troubleshoot and fix any suspended tasks in Laserfiche Forms, we can use the Laserfiche Forms designer and monitor area to troubleshoot those items as well. So those 4 topics are up here for today. And that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some live demo work here on the system. And first up is our zombie workflows. And I have a repository here, and we have a document that was uploaded, but it seems to be creating multiple folders on a frequent basis. And as we can see, it's creating folders and then moving a document around. So this potentially could have been created by a workflow that was created, and then you have a workflow that gets created, a second workflow that might be created later on that affects the documents, let's say, that are being created, and you kind of cause yourself to get into a workflow loop, as they might call it. And in fact, in the workflow designer, if you have issues with a out of control workflow that seems to be looping on itself, you can stop those workflows and then fix the issue. As you can see, it just created another folder there every minute or so. So I've got this workflow where I have two workflows, one that is triggered on the document and then does something else and then moves the document back. So we've kind of got this loop. So how do we fix an out of control or looping workflow? I've called it zombie workflows, but this would be something where you've got a loop condition that you didn't expect. Now, there is a very simple way to fix a workflow situation that we see here. For all start rules, if we can take a look at workflow A or zombie workflow B, you'll notice that they have these starting events. And if you edit the starting events, you might notice that it has some settings that are looking for an event type, and then it has some conditions. Within these conditions, most of them are usually going to start or trigger a workflow, and then it'll run. But if you want to prevent a workflow from getting out of control and being triggered by workflow itself, you can add a condition to the workflow that can stop it. And in fact, I highly recommend this amongst everything else. Go ahead and add the following condition. We'll move that to the bottom or the top. It could be actually in the top if you want to. And what you want to do is add the user does not equal, and then your workflow account that is being used by workflow to move documents in the system, for example. And you'd actually find it in your get metadata from option, and that's related to your connection profile, which is basically what tells workflow what account to use within the repository to do the things it's being told to do. And in my case, we've got an account called WF. Now, adding this is the quickest way to prevent workflow from looping on itself. If you have an end user that moves a document or creates a document or puts metadata on a document, which then triggers a workflow, great. Adding this will tell the workflow to ignore any automated functions that maybe a workflow is doing. So this user does not equal workflow function is our best solution to prevent zombie out of control workflows. Go ahead and publish that, and then that workflow should not loop on itself. Now, if you've not done this and you want to stop things, the first thing you want to do is to just get everything back to normal, is come into that workflow once you've identified it and just go ahead and disable the rules, which as you can see will throw it into the disabled or no enabled rule list. And you can double click on the green checkbox there, or down at the bottom you can hit the disable rule, and that'll turn off that rule as well. So once you've done that, what you'll want to do is then, if you have a lot of workflows that are running in the background and you need to stop them, you can also stop the Laserfiche subscriber service. And this is on-premise only, by the way. So this workflow designer is typically for an on-premise system. Those of you with Laserfiche Cloud, there is a different method, and it's really pretty straightforward and very simple. There's nothing to stop. And we'll show you that in setting in a moment, which I had shown you previously, which was the workflow user, how we tell Laserfiche to ignore that account when running workflows. We'll show you that in the Laserfiche Cloud in a moment. But in this case, we'll disable everything, and then you'll want to launch your on the server. This is typically a admin type function. And on the Laserfiche workflow server, you'll want to launch the Laserfiche or the services control panel and go to the list of Laserfiche applications. And you'll notice under Laserfiche, I just typed L, which took us quickly down there. There are two workflow services running on any Laserfiche workflow server. That's the workflow engine itself and the subscriber engine. Now, the subscriber is what pays attention to things happening in the repository, because as you all might have known from any previous trainings, or maybe you don't, Laserfiche workflow is repository centric. It only takes action on one or more repositories that are being monitored. And the subscriber service is looking for changes in the repository, which then runs the workflow, which is actually running the workflow service. So in order to fix things, what you might want to do is actually just stop the service for the subscriber service. That'll tell the system to ignore any changes in the repository while you fix things. In fact, you might want to disable both and do it in a sequence. Disable the subscriber service first, then disable or stop the workflow service second. Then go ahead and disable, or you should actually, you'll have to disable these services before you stop that workflow service. The subscriber service you can stop at any time. It just tells the system, hey, ignore any changes in the repository. But in order to change any of the settings in the workflow designer, you have to have the workflow service running. And since it's stopped, I would get an error if I tried to edit those items. So turn off those conditions on your workflows before shutting off the workflow service. Go ahead and then in the service right there, go ahead and make sure that's stopped. Now, the order to start things up is start the workflow service first, kind of in reverse order that you stopped items, and then go ahead and start the subscriber service. All right, which at that point, the content should have stopped. And as you can see, since we did stop everything and we turned off the conditions, the document actually is not back out there at the root anymore. It's ended up in the last folder that was created and it was sitting in. So the workflow stopped, as we can see here. So that is one of the best ways and best methods to fix a out of control workflow within Laserfiche. Now in the cloud, thankfully in the cloud, if we go to, and for those of you who do have Laserfiche Cloud, I'm going to go to the process automation area from my homepage. So we're logged into Laserfiche Cloud, and under process automation, you would be in your workflow designer tool. And thankfully, within any workflows, we'll go ahead and open up a particular workflow. And in the workflow itself, there are certain settings that are generally configured. Most of the time, the workflow properties include the, if there's no start rules, that's great. If you do create a start rule, we can do that. Let me take a look at a start rule on a workflow that is there. So if we open up a start rule, we can create that, we can enable the start rule, but there's also settings that allow us to not, or basically ignore the process automation user. And within those settings, you do have some options in there. By default, it ignores, within the cloud, it ignores the process automation user. What's the process automation user? That's the workflow engine account, so to speak, that runs in the background of your workflows. Now you can tell it to pay attention, but by default nowadays, the Laserfiche Cloud workflow engine does ignore any tasks or functions that the engine itself has done. So you're actually protected from zombie workflows in Laserfiche Cloud, which is a great thing. So we love doing that, and we love cloud for that. All right, so that is our first topic, Laserfiche workflow techniques to disable and prevent runaway workflows, or zombie workflows as we might call it. All right, the next topic is orphaned documents. And this usually occurs when you are importing a volume, and It's rare, but it does occur. And you might find that if you've imported a volume, potentially from a different repository, and a volume, for those who are not aware of that, is a group of documents stored on a file system. So a volume in Laserfiche parlance is really just the file system and the contents of the documents. And it contains the documents, their metadata, and other properties of those documents, so that if you export a volume from one repository, you can import that volume to another repository and get all the folders and documents and metadata from that other repository and put it into this second repository. Now, sometimes when that happens, the document folder might not have been assigned a volume. Most of the document folders in a repository, they have properties. We'll go ahead and look at that real quick. And as we can see, it has a volume set as its default volume. If it has no volume assigned, that could be a problem, especially if you're trying to import it into a second repository, right? Typically it is set, but if it wasn't and it has issues and it doesn't automatically set it when it brings it into the second repository, you could get a folder called orphaned, and you'll find documents in this orphaned folder. It literally will create this folder called orphaned. So if you see a folder like that in your system, that's why it exists, is because of a volume import or a repository copy was made. Okay, so that is on-premise only. You won't see that in the cloud because there is no volumes in the cloud, and typically you're not seeing any issues there. Although theoretically, if you did upload in a conversion, there might be, but it's doubtful. There's a lot of tools when you are converting from on-premise to cloud to prevent that from even happening, and there'll be some reports that you'll then want to look at and correct any issues before the conversion is actually done. So on-premise systems, you might find this, otherwise you won't. All right. Next up is the topic of expired or deactivated users. We've got some zombies there, if you will, and there's a couple ways to take a look at them. In the cloud, for example, we would have our users, and if we navigate as an admin, you do need admin rights to see your account listing. So under the admin settings in the accounts area, if you have admin rights, you can find this in the cloud and find the list of your users. And you'll see your list of all of the users. And what you want to do is very simply sort by status. And if we sort by that status, we can see that we've sorted descending, and we've got some inactive users. And if you want to, you can then select that user and reactivate the account. If it's been deactivated for just a short period of time, as an admin, you can reactivate those accounts or delete them as you see fit. In the cloud, one of the most important accounts that you will find is the support user account. This account could be used by yourselves as a admin type account that you'll enable for a certain period of time to do administrative work if you don't want to use your own. And then also typically the support user account is enabled and provided to your reseller so that they can log into the cloud system and do some work on your behalf. But that account will either be inactive or active, but you can't get rid of the account. Other accounts might be added or removed whenever necessary, all right? Or deactivated if you don't need them. So that's in the cloud. Now, what about an account in a repository? For those accounts in a single repository that aren't necessarily cloud accounts or coming from Laserfiche directory server, which we'll come back to, we might look in our repository users list. And here in the administration console, you actually get some configuration options, go ahead and click on View, then choose Add Remove Columns. Now, out of the box, it has most of the columns available to you, but you might just notice in the list, we have last login and last logout plus account status. And you can rearrange the order of these columns. So I'm going to move the last login up higher on the list, account status up there as well, and go ahead and click OK. So now you can see that your users have a login time and account status listing, and you can sort by these columns. Go ahead and click on that column and it'll sort ascending. Click again, it'll sort descending. So you can find out, hey, I've got an account that hasn't been used in quite a long time. Are they still around? Are they still alive? That account is something we just might disable. And if you go into that account, you can open up the account properties and you can disable the account by clicking the disable option. Or if it's already been disabled, it would show that, and you can re-enable it by enabling or unchecking the disable option on that account. So now you can see the account status has changed to disabled. All right. So within a single repository for repository only accounts, not Windows accounts, you might find that functionality there. Now, on a Windows account, there are properties as well, although typically you'll find that that account is disabled in the Windows domain admin side of things, not here in Laserfiche. But you can, if you want to, disable authentication so that the user, even though they might be a Windows user still, they don't get access to a repository. So you can turn that off by denying their access. But typically that's not something you change. And then finally on Laserfiche Directory Server, again, Directory Server is on-premise systems only. You won't find this in Laserfiche Cloud. You'll have a list of users under the Accounts tab. Go ahead and highlight that Accounts tab. And then in that list, you can see that the accounts, if they're disabled, are grayed out, but you can also sort by a status column here. I'll just say sort by disabled and hit search, and that shows me any accounts that are currently disabled. Go ahead and click on the account name, and as you can see, it gives you the properties, and just you can re-enable the account if necessary. Hit save, and now that account is an active account. All right, so that's in Laserfiche Directory Server. Again, these accounts are probably tied to Windows accounts, but you can disable a account here in Laserfiche Directory Server if it is here in LFDS, regardless of the type of account. All right, so go ahead and close that view. So we are searching, let's change our sort for any, sort that, and as you can see, here's a Windows account, and as we see here, we can tell this account to not be synchronized, things like that, but Windows accounts typically will be disabled, as I mentioned before, on the Active Directory side of things, not here in LFDS. Okay. There's other properties here, but we'll go ahead and deselect that. So that is our deactivated or expired users accounts. For Windows accounts in LFDS, if they have been deactivated in Directory Server, it is possible that they remain here in Laserfiche Directory Server. There are synchronization rules under your settings, and then under identity provider, and then under rules, where the capability to remove tombstones, as they call it, might be set up. So we might need to have that looked at. If you don't remove what they call tombstones, or the remains of an account, from the accounts listing here in Laserfiche Directory Server, then you'll have to remove the account on its own. So you can delete it. Down in the bottom right corner, you can see the delete button for that Windows account, but that's usually not necessary. You can just leave it in there if you want. But for organization's sake, you might want to clean that up. So if that does occur and you do have remains of an account that is no longer a Active Directory account in the Active Directory side of things, the non-Laserfiche side, if you will, then that can be cleaned up here in the Laserfiche directory server. All right, so that's 3 different ways to check on deactivated or expired users. And then finally, if you have business processes, those accounts might be found in business processes in Laserfiche forms. And this could be in both on-premise forms or in Laserfiche Cloud. We can go and see what's going on with the status by using our monitoring within Laserfiche Cloud. And in this case, I have several different processes and we're viewing them. The one column I focus in on immediately, and I would recommend for looking for suspended or issues with tasks in a forms process or any forms process, use the status column. You can change the order of this column. You can go to your column picker, and then the status column you can actually move. Can I move it to the very first in the list? Go ahead and hit save. I moved it to the second column there. Usually the first column you can't change, but we'll give it a second here to refresh. World's fastest computer. And then that status column you could then sort by. All right, there it is. Okay, now as we can see, one of my processes has been suspended. And that way we can find that. How do we fix that? Well, for suspended tasks, I do recommend if you right-click, view the error log, and that will usually tell you a reason why. In this case, the error occurred during the save to repository task, which means at some part of the process itself, it's trying to save either the form or an attachment to the repository, and it's either misconfigured or there's a field that is required, but we are not providing data in the mapping of that save to with the metadata to that field that is required, and therefore we need to fix it in the process design. So one would simply go to the manage area, go to this process, fix the actual design issue, go ahead and save that, and then you can come in here and click retry steps, and your suspended task should function normally and then complete as normal. If it comes back, you'll have to do further troubleshooting, view that error log, and then fix that process again. So hopefully that fixes it there. Now, if we are in Laserfiche Cloud, for example, and we're in a business process and we want to see what's going on there, we get a monitor tab up at the top here as well within the cloud business process. And if that task is monitored, we can do searches for contain suspended tasks. We can select a process. You could select all of them, whatever process you want. Go ahead and then change your last updated time and then hit search, and you can find those that have suspended in here. Now, fixing it is the same method. You'll be able to see the error message, and then you can go back to the design and fix it there in cloud as well. So go ahead and fix your issue. Go ahead and restart it or retry the steps as they call it. You have icons up there in the top right corner in the on-premise cloud environment for business processes if you had an instance that was and what's interesting is I can't search for all instances in the cloud. So I don't know, see no processes selected. So one does have to pick either all of them. As you can see, you can pick your processes and look for anything. There we go. So as you can see, right-clicking, view the error log. That'll tell you what the issue is, and then you'll fix that. So apparently there's trying to send an email and didn't have an email address to send to. Fix that in the process design, and you're good to go. All right, I didn't see any questions come up, so that is great, I assume. But let's go back and go ahead and finish out our presentation here. Laserfiche additional resources. As I mentioned, the recording will be available on our Cities Digital YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and type in CDI or Cities Digital, and this video will be up there in a few days or by the end of the week. Also, Laserfiche has a support site, a answers forum, and a solutions exchange. The answers forum is fantastic for finding answers to common questions or even not so common questions. It's a forum, so if you can't find an answer there, you can post your own questions. It does require a free Laserfiche support site account, which you can register for right there online, as long as you have your Laserfiche serial number and your email address and the company name. You can get a free account. The solution exchange is going to have other solutions from other resellers or from Laserfiche themselves that show you how to solve common business processes and build them out using workflow and forums so that you can get a solution that makes sense for you, for your users. And the support site has troubleshooting capability, any kind of answers regarding error messages and things like that. However, if you are having real issues, you're probably going to reach out to your reseller's support desk in those cases. Well, thank you again for all of your attendance. We'll wrap it up here and conclude our training. So again, from all of us here at CDI, thank you so much for attending our Zombie Apocalypse Scenarios webinar. Look forward to seeing you at the next training. Have a great day to all of you. See you at the next one.